Now it seems like a lifetime ago since I put out my last pickups video, and the games that I pick up, well, they don't go up there until I've shown them to you. And if you want to see what's in the all killer, no filler PlayStation pickups, you just wait until after these. So hello friends, and welcome back to Generation Pixel for some all-killer, no-filler PlayStation pickups. And by PlayStation pickups, I don't mean PlayStation 2, 3, 4 or 5. I'm talking strictly PlayStation, PS1 if you must. And the first game that I found out there in the wild that I just had to pick up was Soul Blade. Now the fighting games, the one-on-one fighting games weren't something that I was heavily into back in the mid-90s. I probably hadn't played seriously on one of these games since Street Fighter II, so that kinda shows you the age I was when I was seriously trying to compete in these games. But Soul Blade, when it came out for the PlayStation, it was mind-blowing. The graphics were fantastic, the moves were great, using weapons in a game, that's just what we all wanted at that time. And of course, it was a way to either get one up on your friends back in the day, or for them to get one up on you, and nothing beat sitting down with a few beers and playing a one-on-one fighter casually with your friends. So Soul Blade, in lovely condition, especially for its age, is in the collection, and I'm delighted with this one. Now the second game I'm going to show you is a JRPG. It's an action JRPG, so that's pretty much why I haven't played this one yet, despite it being the age it is. And that game is Alundra. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love the turn-based and strategy RPGs, whereas the action ones didn't quite catch me back in the day. I do want to go back into the action RPGs, start dipping into this library and seeing what this genre had to offer. As far as I've been led to believe, The Adventures of Alundra is one of the best that you can pick up. So many people rave about it, and when I saw it out there in the wild in lovely condition, I just had to pick it up. So finally, Alundra is in the collection, and I'll get to play some action RPG for a change. So the next game I'm going to show you is a game that I've been hunting for quite a while, and not hunting out there because it's rare or pricey or anything like that. It's because you never see the black label version out there. Well, not until just recently, and that game is Hogs of War. Now, I don't know if you know the Hogs of War, but this is basically like taking the Worms game into the 3D realm. And not only that, the voice acting is done by the legendary late but very great Rick Mail. Now obviously with Rick Mail being involved in this project, you know there's a lot of humour in there, and there is. But the beauty of this game, like many games back in the mid-90s, was sitting down and playing with your friends. Yes, you can have some fun playing single player, but if you're not throwing that grenade at your friend, then it just doesn't have the same appeal. But I'm so happy to finally get a black label version of Hogs of War into the collection, where it will live now forevermore. Next up, it's going to be a licensed game, but not licensed from a TV show, and certainly not licensed from a movie. So what could it be? Well, it was licensed from a book and a particular author, and that is Discworld II. Now, I am a huge fan of Terry Pratchett and his Discworld series, so much so that I still haven't read the last book, because after his passing and knowing that there's not going to be another Discworld book, I just haven't had the heart to read that one last Discworld book yet. But I can now dive back into Discworld 2 on the PlayStation. Now, this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, because one, it's a point and click adventure, so beware Tommy, you probably don't want to play this one. And two, it's based on Discworld, which has a sort of special logic of its own as well. So if you take those two ingredients, point and click and Terry Pratchett's mind, then this is an absolute beast to play. I wouldn't recommend you playing it without a walkthrough. I wouldn't even recommend you playing it without a walkthrough if you had read every Terry Pratchett book either, because it's point and click, it's just crazy, and on a level beyond any other point and click you're probably likely to play. But I am ecstatic to have Discworld 2 for the PlayStation in the collection. where it will live forevermore. So next up is another licensed game, and it's from the same license, but it's not Discworld 1 for the PlayStation 1, it's Discworld Noir. Now this is one that you don't see a lot out there, especially in decent condition, and especially for the price I got this for, because this was, well, it was cheap as chips in my opinion anyway, well worth picking up. Now Discworld Noir is a point and click game, but it's not quite as obtuse as the first two Discworld games. It does have that Terry Pratchett humour running through it, and slightly Terry Pratchett logic, but it's not quite as balls deep as the other two. With Discworld Noir, you play as a detective, an old, 1940s detective, despite the fact that Discworld is set somewhere in maybe the Middle Ages. But again, that's Terry Pratchett logic, we don't want to get into that. So you're playing as this detective, and the very start of the game, this is not a spoiler, it's the start of the game, you get murdered. So you're basically investigating your own murder. But not only that, just to add that extra level to it, you are a werewolf, or have been turned into a werewolf. So you can transform into your werewolf self to sniff out some of the clues that you will need to solve the crimes. So there you go, Discworld Noir, very happy to get that in the collection, and it'll sit beside Discworld 2 quite nicely, and it's just waiting for the first Discworld game to pop up into the collection, and I'm sure it will come in at some point. But Discworld Noir, very happy to have it there. So next up is not a licensed game, it's an RPG, not only an RPG but a JRPG and turn-based, so it's a holy trinity of the perfect game for me, and that is Breath of Fire 3. Now this was a game that I had back in the day that I got rid of, we all know the story. You collect, you decide you don't want to collect anymore, and then you decide you need to collect again. It's that old chestnut. But Breath of Fire 3 was a game that I got rid of back in the day that I needed back into the collection. This was a must-own game. Now it was Final Fantasy VII that got its hooks into me back in 1997 that really drew me into the JRPG genre. And from there I went hunting for whatever else I could find, which led me to Suikoden and Suikoden 2, and then this, Breath of Fire 3. It's a wonderful sort of pixel art, but tries to be pseudo 3D game. Hard to explain, but if you ever play it, you'll get what I mean. You play as a young man who's actually a dragon, and out in the world there's these genes that you can collect, that you can splice with your own genes, and then morph into different types of dragons with different abilities. And not only that, this was the first game where you could combine spells, or the first game that I played that you could combine spells. So if one character had cast a fire spell and the next character had cast a wind spell, you might get a more powerful spell from the combination of both, and that was something that absolutely blew me away back in the day. So that's Breath of Fire 3. So happy to get it back into the collection, and it's going to live there forever now. Now next up is another RPG, another JRPG, but not turn-based this time, it's tactical. And this one, Vandal Hearts 2. Now Vandal Hearts was another one of those games that I was led to after playing Final Fantasy VII, because I was just trying to get my hands on as much JRPG as I could at the time, and Vandal Hearts was just so unique for me. Now Vandal Hearts 2 is slightly different in combat style from Vandal Hearts, the first one, because in Vandal Hearts 2 it's not a case of you moving your team into position and then choosing an action and then waiting for the enemy's team. When you move your first character in Vandal Hearts 2, an enemy piece moves at the same time, so it becomes super tactical. And by that I'll explain that if you were going to try and attack one of the enemy sprites on the screen and set up your move to do so in such a fashion, once the move is executed, that enemy that you've set yourself up to attack might also be on the move, so by the time you get there and swing your sword, it's no longer there. So Vandal Hearts 2 is a little bit more tactically demanding than the first game. Now I do love the first Vandal Hearts game slightly more than this, and I think that's more down to the fact that was the first one that I'd played and I really got into the characters and story of that one. But this is also a fabulous game. Again, it's not a cheap game at the moment. I did manage to get this at a very good price, a price I was happy to pay, and it's certainly in great condition as well. So Vandal Hearts 2 back into the collection again, because it's one of the games that I got rid of in the past and it's not going anywhere now. That's Vandal Hearts 2 and here to stay. So there you go my friends, that's the PlayStation games that I've made over the last 6 weeks ago, and I hope you agree with me that they're mostly, or actually all killer and no filler, because every single one of those games were ones that I wanted into my collection. To be honest with you, the only one that I wouldn't have actively sought out was Soul Blade. But then again, when you see it, you're reminded that that's a good example of a great game that you need into your collection. Now, if you've got any fond memories of these games, then drop that down in the comments, because the interaction between you and me is what I do YouTube for. Thank you very much for watching as always, and until next time, of course, cheerio!